This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! Whoa, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig. We got a lot to get to, 1 hour to do it. NFL midweek, lots of Eagles news to get to. If you missed any of it, go to 973ESPN.com right now. Doug Peterson spoke today. The first injury report hit this week. We got Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, who'll join us coming up at 6:15 to get more into the Eagles, plus a little high school football news dropped this afternoon as well. We'll get Dave's perspective on all of that. NBA playoffs was off the charts last night. Incredible excitement, incredible drama in both games and in the aftermath of both games as well last night. Plus, the Big Ten, they're coming back. Getting all that coming up, all with and the PlaySugarHouse.com text board 609-403-0973. Be on the conversation here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As we sit here right now with the Eagles, I did want to touch on a couple of the news items. You can check out the full list of the injury report right now at 973ESPN.com or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And Lane Johnson, Miles Sanders, you can see the videos right there up on the website. They're back in practice. They're back to working out. And they were full participants at practice, so they are on track to play this Sunday. And that's a huge, huge deal because when you look back on the Eagles game, at some point, you just got to realize that you weren't walking in to that fight with Washington with a loaded deck. You weren't walking in there with everything on the up and up. And I understand that you got to play whoever's in front of you. But Brian Baldinger brought up something earlier on the Sports Bash about Lane Johnson. And I wanted to play it back for you because it really emphasizes the difference between what we're going to see this Sunday versus this past Sunday.
Well, I mean, he's just an elite player. I mean, he rolls out of bed. He's an all-pro player. Now, he's coming back from this ankle surgery. We got to see how healthy he is. He's probably a little ahead of schedule here. The normal recovery time is about 6 weeks. He's trying to do it in less than 4. So we got to see. But I think he's going to be fine.
That first comment, it just stands out, right? He walks, he rolls out of bed. He's an all-pro. He's elite. And that's the difference. Nothing against Jack Driscoll. And actually, according to different people, he did all right. He wasn't horrible. But there's a huge difference between one of the best right tackles in the NFL and a rookie who played well for his first NFL game. It's a huge difference. Now, it doesn't excuse the fact that Doug Peterson still was making calls as if he had Lane Johnson out there. It still doesn't excuse the fact that Carson Wentz has got to stop holding on to the ball. He's got to get the ball out of his hands. But there is a massive difference between Jack Driscoll and Lane Johnson. It's a huge deal that Lane is going to be out there because this team does so much better when he's on the field. They can run plays better. He brings you stability on the right side of the line. And don't forget, there's a lot of times that the right side of the line is the release for the tight end. I don't think it's an accident that Dallas Goedert had a better game on Sunday than Zach Ertz. Because Zach Ertz was releasing off of that right side, and they were probably asking him to maybe do a little bit more. He wasn't as sure of what he was doing because of who he was next to. And as Brian Baldinger said earlier today, listen, at the end of the day, it wasn't a single player's fault. It wasn't Nate Herbig's fault. It wasn't Jack Driscoll's fault. It wasn't a single player's fault why they lost to Washington.
There wasn't one-on-one pass blocking wasn't the issue. It was everything else was an issue. The scheme, holding the ball too long, dropping back 50 times, just giving these guys a chance. Del Rio was good in some of his calls. They won the down. They were 8 deep on the defensive line. They kept those guys fresh. And so they got a lot of chances to rush the quarterback.
You mentioned this scheme, and I mentioned this on Monday here on Game Night. Doug Peterson had a bad game plan. He had a bad game. But this is what the Eagles do. Every year they have that game, right? Last year it was the Dolphins game. The year before it was the Saints game. The year before that it was the Chiefs game. They always have a game where it all goes downhill, right? So hopefully they got it out of the way and they'll be okay getting it out of the way and out of their system after game one. I'm not promising you anything, but I'm just saying that there is a history to that. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. Now, the Phillies are playing tonight, and the Phillies have made a couple moves that are interesting, shall I call them. Now, we knew Jake Arrieta was probably going to go to the injured list. Well, he's officially placed on the injured list, as well as Kyle Garlick. But the interesting thing is who they called up. They called up Connor Brogdon, who, okay, makes sense, but then Mickey Moniak. I am very interested to see exactly how many at-bats, how many games he actually gets in. Because the reviews on him have not been great since he joined the Phillies organization. Whether it's a guy like Keith Law, who's been on with the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, whether it's other people who scout baseball, whether it's a service like Baseball America, a lot of these people, they just don't think very highly of him. He was the first overall pick in his draft. You have to wonder what kind of statement he can make being called up on a team that doesn't 100% need him, but if he could be a solid contributor, it would be very beneficial. And your lineup tonight for the Phillies includes McCutchen in left, Roman Quinn in center, Adam Hazley in right, Alec Boehm at first, Bryce Harper is your DH, Segura at third, Gregorius at short, Knapp is the catcher, Kingery at second. He had a home run the other day. I would love to see what the next several days have in store for the former number 1 overall pick. You get drafted that high. When you get called to the majors, you got to do something. I don't know what that something is right now. I don't want to put specific expectations on the young man, but you have to do something. You have to show that that number 1 overall pick wasn't a waste. I'm not saying you have to be the best of the best. I'm not saying you have to be the hottest hitter on the Phillies. But what I am saying is you got to give me something. You got to give me something that shows me that you belong. Because if you don't, that's a bad look for the organization. And I understand that draft wasn't a loaded draft. You go back to the 2016 Major League Baseball draft. It's not like there's a ton of guys who were monsters, right? It's not like there was this like heavy draft, or there wasn't like a Mike Trout that got picked later in the draft or anything like that. But there are obviously some names that stand out. Ian Anderson being one of them, A.J. Puck being another guy. There are guys who were drafted that year. Kyle Lewis having an incredible year right now out there in Seattle. I would love to have Kyle Lewis over everybody but Bryce Harper in the Phillies outfield right now. That guy, Kyle Lewis, is incredible the way he's hitting. He was picked 11th in the draft. So there were some really good players who were picked in this draft. The question is, what are you going to do, Mickey Moniak? What are you going to show us? How are you going to prove your worth to this organization? Clock is ticking on you, Mickey Moniak. The clock is ticking. Now's the time to put up or shut up, young man. This is Game Night. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. We got Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, also covered high school sports in our area for a long time, joining us next. We'll get into the Eagles loss in week 1, look ahead to week 2, as well as touch on the latest news about high school football and their plans for the postseason this year in South Jersey. Game Night being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. 609-403-0973 is the PlaySugarHouse.com text board right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll get your text in just a bit at 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. It's Wednesday. You know what that means? It's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joins us each and every week here on Game Night to talk about the Eagles or whatever else is going on in the sports world. And he joins us, all guests do, on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
Josh, how are you?
Good. So I first want to get some of your impressions. Again, folks can check out your extra points columns at 97.3ESPN.com. And I got to tell you, my first reaction from that game on Sunday initially was, we got a stubborn head coach and we got a stubborn quarterback, Dave.
Yeah, I think you're right on both counts there. I was really stunned at the way things unfolded in the second half. In particular, I just didn't understand the play calling, not running the ball at all. I didn't understand Carson Wentz's decision making. The whole thing just didn't make any sense to me. I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, and I don't claim to be some sort of, super genius when it comes to football. I'm obviously here talking to you. I'm not coaching a football team in the NFL, but I feel like that I've seen enough of certain things to understand how things work. Like, for example, what have we seen in the NFL? If you were going against a team with a good defensive front, you run a lot of hurry up, you run a lot of quick hits. Jared Goff was doing it on Sunday night, and I think if Jared Goff can do stuff like that, I don't know why Carson Wentz can't do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And he's done it in the past. I don't know why they didn't do it on Sunday, but they seemed enamored with trying to throw the ball, 60 yards downfield to Jalen Reagor, which worked once. Didn't work so well after that. One of the real puzzling things to me was Deshaun Jackson's lack of playing time on Sunday. Apparently he wasn't hurt, but he was a non-factor for pretty much all the game, and yet they rested him today in practice because it was a rest day for some of the veterans. So he should be really well rested for the Rams game.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. It seems like every year with Doug Peterson, this team has to have like a really bad look loss, right? In the Super Bowl year, it was the Chiefs game. A couple of years ago, it was that Saints debacle. Last year, it was the Dolphins game. Is that what it is? Does the Eagles under Doug Peterson need a bit of a kick in the face in order to kind of figure out that maybe something's going sideways before it goes too far?
I don't know. I think it's just the nature of the game. I mean, every team probably goes through it where, you're hard to see any team, cruise through an entire regular season. There's always a bump in the road. What was surprising to me was that it happened in the first game. Doug was undefeated in season openers going into Sunday. And I know there was a lack of preseason and a lack of, no OTAs, no mini camps. So, teams are getting their feet wet, but the Eagles were in no different position than every other team. And yet they couldn't find a way to get it done. I know part of the blame should be on the offensive line injuries. Part of the blame should be no Miles Sanders on the offense. But that's what surprised me the most, that the seemingly lack of preparation for the first game. That really surprised me.
Do you think anything that we saw on Sunday was reflective of the lack of a preseason and the lack of a regular offseason schedule for the Eagles?
Maybe to a degree, although I think it was more just the lack of continuity up front, really. To have Nate Herbig as starting at right guard was surprising to me. Having the rookie at right tackle, Jack Driscoll, Where was Matt? Well, Matt Pryor was just sitting on the bench, which didn't make any sense to me. And Jason Peters basically had 3 days to get ready to play left tackle again. So I think that was like the main thing. But I'm not really willing to place the blame on the lack of a preseason, though. I mean, Carson Wentz has been in the league long enough to know to get rid of the ball when the pressure breaks down and there's no play to be made. While you're hanging on the ball to take a sack makes no sense to me. But that's been his MO for pretty much all of his career so far.
You mentioned Nate Herbig. Today, Doug Peterson said that the right guard is Nate's job for now, and that they also mentioned later that they're mixing the new signee, Jamon Brown, into the mix, was the term he used. What is your perspective on what the Eagles are doing with this right guard situation? Because the Eagles are insisting that Nate Herbig played better than I think a lot of other people maybe believe.
Yeah, I really don't know anybody that played well on the offensive line. That includes Jason Kelsey and Jason Peters. It seemed like the entire unit struggled. Jamon Brown should help, though. He's got some experience. I think he's got like 40-some, NFL starts, so that puts him way ahead of Nate Herbig, who now has one. So, yeah, I think it's probably just a matter of him getting comfortable with the system. I think you'll see him in the lineup before too long. I mean, Nate's a serviceable guy, can play both center and guard. But I really don't see him as a long-term solution, or the short-term solution, I should say, until Brandon Brooks gets back next year. But the offensive lines, the entire offensive line struggled, and they really need to get their stuff together before and get together quick with Aaron Donald coming to town.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Dave, another thing today was the good news was Lane Johnson, he said a couple of days ago to Derek Gunn, I'm going to be out there. Well, he was out there, a full participant at practice. So, to me, I think some people may overlook this at times, but I talked about this before. Lane Johnson may be the most important player on this offense, and there's obviously going to be a huge difference between him and Jake Driscoll out there. So, what does that difference mean in your mind for the Eagles this Sunday?
It means a lot in terms of stability. I mean, Lane's certainly going through his issues with inconsistency and suspensions and what have you. But when he is out there, he is the best offensive lineman they have. I mean, you could probably argue Brandon Brooks too. But Lane's as good as it gets when it comes to right tackles, and they've become more and more important in recent years, especially. Everybody used to focus on left tackle as the premier position on the offensive line, but Lane and some of the other guys have really proven that the right tackle is just as important. And, having him back is going to be a big help. I don't know how much yet. I don't know how well he's going to work with Herbig. But just having him out there is a big asset for the team.
Also, another guy who's full participant today was Miles Sanders. Obviously, we saw how, for lack of a better term, difficult it was to watch the offense when it came to Boston Scott and Corey Clement at times out there. So I would assume, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to realize that bringing back a guy who was top 10 in the NFL last year at all-purpose yards back into the offense is definitely going to help them this Sunday.
Oh, most definitely, yeah. Doug had made it clear during the offseason that Miles was going to be the workhorse, the bell cow, if you will, of the backfield, and not to have him out there. I was kind of surprised that he wasn't. I don't know he was hurt that badly. There were some people who've speculated that maybe they thought that the Redskins game was going to be a little easier than it was. That's why they rested Miles and Lane. Maybe they thought they'd get another week's rest out of those guys, but it turned out not to be the case. But, yeah, Miles is going to change that offense dramatically, I think, both as a runner and a receiver.
When you look ahead to this game with the Rams, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is, okay, we all know about Aaron Donald. We don't need to overhash that point too incredibly. But the thing that stands out to me is what can the Eagles do defensively? Because the Rams, yes, they beat the Cowboys last week, but they only scored 20 points. And that was a Cowboys team that throughout the game, they lost Leighton Vander Esch to a broken collarbone. That was a Cowboys team that looked like early on they were getting run over by the run game. But as the game went on, the Rams only scored 20 points. So is that maybe a good sign that the Eagles defense could have maybe similar success in limiting the Rams on the scoreboard?
Yeah, they should. I mean, the Eagles defense by and large is a pretty consistent unit, and they don't give up a whole lot of points. Generally, they're going to keep the team in the game, and I think that'll be the case again on Sunday. I think one of the things that might be to the detriment, though, is that there's no fans in the stands. I think the defense really feeds off the energy of the crowd at home, and not having anybody at the link, I think, might be a little bit of might even the playing field a little bit between the Rams offense and the Eagles defense. But I think they certainly have the talent there to limit to what the Rams are going to be able to do. I wouldn't expect the Rams to score too many points, and hopefully the Eagles offense can get on track enough to outscore them just enough to win the game at least.
Also, when I was watching the Rams-Cowboys game on Sunday night, I also noticed that the Cowboys, they don't have a great secondary. I think most people know that. And even the Cowboys secondary was able to deal with what the Rams are throwing at them. I would argue that Darius Slay is better than any guy on the Cowboys secondary.
Yeah, he is. I thought he had a pretty good game on Sunday against Terry Lauren, and limited him to like 2 catches, I think. The rest of the secondary, though, I'm not really sold on. I still don't know that Jalen Mills is an NFL safety. I think there's a little bit of inconsistency in the secondary still. They're just going to have to hope that the front four can generate some pressure on Goff, make him throw when he really, before he really wants to, and I think they'll be okay. I mean, I'm not really willing to think I'm not really ready to say that the Eagles secondary is going to shut anybody down, except for Darius Slay, of course. But they really need to get some pressure on Goff if they want to pull this out.
Of course, folks can check out your extra point columns after the Eagles game again, after Sunday's Eagles-Rams game at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, I want to get your opinion as well on the situation with high school football, because on the same day that the news came out about the Big Ten is going to make their resumption of their season in October, well, the NJSIA is going to have playoffs, but they're going to be these groupings in November, and it just feels like and I'm not trying to be mean, but when I read this story, the first thing that came out to my mind was participation trophies, and I kind of feel like that's kind of like just let's have football for the sake of having football, and it kind of takes away from what makes this what is down here great, which is you have 2 months of great competitive high school football, and then you get teams qualifying for the playoffs.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, Josh. It does feel a little bit like that. I'm not really sure what they're thinking. I don't understand the point of it. If you're going to have a postseason, then have it. Have the fight for the South Jersey championships or even the state playoffs after that. I mean, to just jumble these teams together in quarter groupings just to have another game or two just doesn't really serve any purpose to me. I would say either go with the state playoffs as they're currently constructed, or don't have them at all.
I was going to say, instead of having a state playoff, why don't we just have a full slate of a high school season going
that's not a bad idea.
From October through November, and then have all the old Thanksgiving Day rivalry games the final week of the season for everybody.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I know the Thanksgiving Day games are still intact from what I understand. But yeah, you're right. Why don't you play like 8 or 9, regular season games and then cap it off at the Thanksgiving? That would be a perfect way to end the season, really.
Yeah, because, to me, and I'm not trying to diminish anything. Listen, these kids, they work hard. They got to keep their grades up. They got to go to practice and everything. I remember what it was like. I was not that great of an athlete myself in high school, but I remember how hard it was just to make the team and be competitive and go out there. And I just feel like it's almost like a hollow gesture to these athletes and these coaches and these schools that, realistically, in the environment that we're living in, there's a lot more questions than answers anyway.
Yeah, they'd probably be better off siding on the side of caution here. Quite frankly, I'm surprised they're even having a season, to be honest with you. If you'd have told me that a month ago, I would have thought no way that the high school season is going to be played. But something's better than nothing. But you're right. It just really makes no sense to just put together this grouping thing. I don't understand I don't understand what the big deal is about it.
I think part of the big deal is, and you tell me what you think of this, Dave, because you've been covering this longer than I have, and that is, I feel like there's such a demand for it that the people feel obligated to give them something. And, maybe sometimes, the idea of, well, we have good intentions. Well, we know the old story about good intentions.
Yeah, true. Again, yeah, like if they're going to do this and do it right, do it like they've had playoffs in the past. Let the people compete for South Jersey championships, or they haven't really had state finals yet, except for the non-public people. But just go ahead and let them play the way they're is meant to play, meant to be played, and not try to invent something just to placate them.
He's Dave Weinberg. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19 here on Weinberg Wednesday, every Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. He joined us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Make sure you check out his extra point columns at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, always appreciate the time and the conversation.
Oh, thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the U.S. Open this weekend, too.
You got a prediction?
No. I'd love to see Phil Mickelson, but I don't think he has a chance. I'm going to go with Xander Schauffele.
Well, it's funny because I saw a headline earlier today. People were putting out betting lines for Dustin Johnson or the field, and my gut instinct was to go field just because, the last person I heard to go this person or the field was Tiger Woods. And DJ is not Tiger Woods, not even in his dreams.
No, he's having a great month. I think he's 1-2 and finished second twice in his last four. But, it's awfully hard to keep that up in professional golf. And with Winged Foot being as difficult as it's going to be, I would go with the field as well. Yeah,
I like Dustin Johnson. I don't have a lot of faith in him on that course. I mean, if I was personally going to go with anyone, I would probably consider John Rahm, but that's just me.
Yep, me too. Especially being an Arizona State guy like my son. Yep.
Well, you have an ulterior motive for that. I don't.
Yeah, I usually do. Yep.
Dave, appreciate the time. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the golf, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. The PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open at 609-403-0973. We'll get to your text on the other side. Plus, I'll give you my perspective on the NBA playoff games last night, as well as Big Ten is coming back at the end of October. But I'm not loving it. I'll tell you why next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Thanks again to Dave Weinberg for joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. I'll give you my perspective on the NBA playoffs last night, as well as I'm very mixed in my emotions. For someone who loves college football as much as I do, I'm going to tell you why in about a few minutes from now, why I'm not thrilled with the Big Ten coming back. But first, your text, 609-403-0973. Tom from the Villas brings up a very interesting question. And this is the perfect question to follow up a conversation we were having yesterday here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom from the Villas says, Doug Peterson seems to have more success when he's making adjustments for his backup quarterbacks. Doug and Wentz might not be meant for each other. What is your opinion? Tom, that's a great question about Wentz and Peterson. Because the first thing I thought of when you said that was what Doug Peterson said today to the media. And I want to grab the quote here because they asked him about Jared Goff. And I remember that was the year Goff went 1, Wentz went 2. And they're going to see Jared Goff this week. And most people would agree that since being drafted, Wentz has outperformed Goff, right? That he has played better than Goff. And Doug Peterson was asked, if you didn't have the first, you did the first pick, but if Carson was the guy you wanted looking back, why was he the right guy for your team? And Peterson's answer to me stood out. He said, quote, well, I mean, obviously both quarterbacks were top of the list. We had done our due diligence on both quarterbacks, on both players, and we liked Goff as well. And yet looking back and kind of thinking back on some of the conversations, just felt that Carson was a better fit for us here in Philadelphia. His makeup, his chemistry, the style of kind of play, of fit, what we are doing, and it's nothing against Jared Goff because he's obviously had a great career so far. It just made Carson a better fit for us at the time, unquote. That's like Peterson earlier today. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up as the response to your question, Tom, is I think there may be something to the fact that there might not be a full connection at this point between Peterson and Wentz. Notice what he said in that quote. Looking back, we felt that he was the better fit. He didn't affirmatively come out and say, well, we liked Carson Wentz from the beginning. We're glad he's here. No, he took a very, for lack of a better term, politically correct answer on that position, which tells me that maybe Carson Wentz hasn't developed and evolved and grown at the rate and the speed and in the ways that maybe the Eagles had hoped. Now, part of that is injuries. You know, the injuries put you behind the 8 ball when it comes to development. But part of it also is I don't think the Eagles fully realized everything that comes with the Carson Wentz package, which is for as talented as he is and as much of a nice human being that he is on the charity work he does, and for as great of a person and all these things, he's a bit hard-headed. He has mechanics issues. He doesn't always make the best decisions at times. He's either hot or cold as a quarterback. He's not very fluid and consistent and even keeled. And for a guy whose idol was Brett Favre, who was a gamer and a guy who did whatever it took for his team to win, I think Wentz tends to remember only the highlights of Brett Favre and not the full games. Because I remember watching Brett Favre too, and I'm older than Carson Wentz. And I remember games where Brett Favre was checking it down the Dorsey Levens, or he was taking the slant route to Antonio Freeman. He wasn't always going deep ball to the Javon Walker, okay? There were moments where a guy like when he had Sterling Sharp, that guy would do a hook route, and he'd hit him like on the money, and it almost looked like the ball was going to go through the receiver's hands because Favre threw it so hard, but the receiver would squeeze for dear life on the football, and then they'd have the catch. I think there's a disconnect when it comes to these conversations that we're having, and I think that maybe there is something to the fact that Doug can only get Wentz so far because Wentz will only hear so much. There's a lot of reports out there that when John DeFilippo and Frank Reich were here, they coached Wentz hard, and they pushed him hard, and they worked him very, very hard. And that there's a very different environment now with Press Taylor, the current quarterback's coach, that he's a guy who is more Wentz's friend and buddy, and it's more of like this intellectual football savant and genius than he is a great coach. You know, whereas DeFilippo would push Wentz hard on his footwork, and Frank Reich would, really get on him at times because of Frank Reich's personal experience with quarterbacks. Remember, Frank Reich was the backup for a Hall of Famer, Jim Kelly. He's coached future Hall of Famers like Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers. So he knows something, aside from that he's Captain Comeback himself. He knows about the quarterback position. And I'm not saying Press Taylor isn't qualified to be a coach, but maybe he doesn't have the background to be able to say to Wentz or the pedigree to say to Wentz, Carson, you got to set your feet when you throw the ball. Carson, why are you making this throw? Now, maybe it doesn't have to come from Press. Maybe it has to come from Doug. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but in my opinion that you asked for Tom from the Villas, I think that, as I said yesterday, if I have to choose between the two guys, I'm keeping Doug and I move on from Wentz. Because you just mentioned it. Doug has had some level of success with a guy that's not named Carson Wentz. That guy was Nick Foles. Now, it should be also noted that Nick Foles was a limited quarterback in his skill set compared to Carson Wentz. Nick Foles isn't going to get you out of a bad situation in the pocket, act like Houdini, and then make a big pass play. It's not what he's capable of physically. You could argue that Foles can push the ball down the field very well, but I think Wentz, when he is focused and willing to do it, is much better in the intermediate game. But what happens? Quarterback gets hit, he overthrows the ball. Quarterback is throwing the ball too much, it's hard to win. That's something that Brian Baldinger talked about today on the Sports Bash about Carson Wentz. Take a listen.
Even when they were up 17-0, he was still getting hit. Back-to-back sacks. He's in love with the deep pass. Some of it is his fault. Some of it is the play calling. He's just taking a lot of punishment. And when he does get hit, he sails a lot of footballs. He's not as sharp as he needs to be. But I'm not making that all on Carson. Every quarterback is like that. I mean, you look up any stat you want. When quarterbacks drop back 50 times or more in games, nobody has a winning record.
So you could argue that the Eagles were going to lose no matter what, right? There could be an argument made that no matter what, they were going to lose that game yesterday, as Brian Baldinger pointed out. Look, getting hit that much, it's hard to win. You throw the ball that much, nobody wins usually. So, maybe, as I said to Dave Weinberg earlier, maybe they just need to lose a game to figure out what they did wrong so they can be better for the rest of the season. Again, I'm just being glass half full over here. But Tom from the Villas brings up a good question. Is there something to be said about the relationship between Wentz and Peterson? Time will tell. We still got another 15 games to go this football season. Text board is open, 609-403-0973 for the play, sugarhouse.com text board. NBA playoffs last night, you heard it here on 97.3 ESPN. Overtime game between the Heat and the Celtics, as well as the game on television last night was the Nuggets and the Clippers. And one of my biggest takeaways from both of those games is it reminded me again of how important it is, how big it is, how incredible it is that it doesn't matter your talent. If one team is playing better as a unit, the other team has no shot. That second half between the Nuggets and the Clippers, we've seen that story before. They did it in the game before. The Nuggets played like a unit. The Nuggets played efficiently on both ends of the court. The commonality between the Celtics and the Clippers is that both teams went into hero ball mode and some of their best players completely came up short. I mean, Paul George looked completely horrible. I'm starting to wonder if he's really as good of a player as we all thought he was. And maybe he was a little bit hyped up or talked up too much or whatever verbiage you want to use. You look at a guy like Kawhi Leonard, for as great as he was last night, he had moments in the game where he just looked like his body language was just very frustrated. And I don't know if there was nothing that could have been done, if that was something Doc Rivers could have done about it. I don't know. But the Clippers have to look at themselves very closely in the mirror. The Celtics got to be careful because the Celtics obviously have more talent from top to bottom than the Miami Heat do. But the Miami Heat played like a team last night. Every man did their job last night. And that's a dangerous thing in sports. Teams win championships. Never forget that. And the Miami Heat have proven again and again that they are a better team and that their team is greater than any individual talents on the other side of the court. And the Celtics can look directly at the Clippers-Nuggets series and say, we don't want that to be us. We don't want that to be us choking in the moment and not playing like a team. We got to get back on the same page. Because let me tell you something. Brad Stevens, He can only draw up so many plays. Tatum, Walker, Brown, they got to get together with Marcus Smart in a huddle, in a room, and talk about how can we not let that happen to us. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Dan from EHT chimed in, says, watching Nikola Jokic last night reminded me how bad of a passer Joel Embiid is. I can't believe how I was putting Ben and Joel in the same category as Murray and the Joker. They are so far below those two, it's ridiculous. JoJo can't pass and Ben can't shoot. Well, first of all, you're being a little harsh on your assessment of Ben and Joel. Because first of all, Nikola Jokic has been playing basketball for a much longer amount of time than Joel Embiid has. Embiid's basketball IQ and knowledge and understanding of the game is light years behind the Joker, who's been playing basketball much longer in his life than Joel Embiid has, not just on the court in the NBA, but before he got to the NBA. Comparing Murray and Ben Simmons is not an equal comparison because they're different players. You know, Murray's more of a scorer than Ben is. Ben is more of a facilitator than Murray is. Ben plays much better defense than Murray. It's not an accident that Ben made the NBA All-Team today in the third slot because he's such a great defender and he can do so many different things on the basketball court. So it's not that they are so far below. It's that here's the difference between Ben Simmons plus Joel Embiid versus Jokic plus Murray. Jokic and Murray are like peanut butter and jelly. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are not. The chemistry and the trust and the cohesiveness between Murray and Joker elevates that team. It makes the entire Denver team elevate. Meanwhile, Ben and Joel, I don't think they really know how to play with each other. I don't think they're really a cohesive unit. I don't know if it's their relationship off the court. I'm not totally sure what it is, but it's something. There's something there between Ben and Joel that they have these inconsistencies in their games, in their chemistry, in their ability to elevate the team around them for as great of a talent as they are. So, let's remember that Murray and Jokic, they're different players. They have different chemistry. It's a lot of different things going on there. Joey D from Ventnor chimes in. We'll get one more text in before we get out of here. 609-403-0973, theplaysugarhouse.com text board. He says, Miami's coach is absolutely perfect for that team. Spoelstra for coach of the year. But Joey D, it's not that the coach is perfect for the team. It's that the team was built for that coach. Pat Riley has purposely selected players that fit the Heat culture over the years. Pat Riley has a way he wants basketball played. He has a way that he believes basketball should be done. It's his system. It's his world down there in Miami. He's the godfather down there, okay? And he knows that if he gives Spoelstra certain players, he can do certain things with them. He knew that Jimmy Butler, with all those guys, Goran Dragic, Bam Adebayo, also bringing in Jay Crowder, drafting a guy like Tyler, he knew all those pieces fit what Spoelstra does best as a coach. So you say Spoelstra for coach of the year. Pat Riley for executive of the year. How about that? Josh Hennig, this is Game Night. We didn't get to my Big Ten conversation today. We'll get to that tomorrow. Game Night tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night.